Welcome back to the show, Dean Hall. I'm happy to have you here, and I thought it would be a good idea to give our audience an update of your ongoing good health and the message you can continue to spread. So thanks for being here.
Oh, well, thank you, Lisa, for having me back. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, so you're the author of a book called The Wild Cure, and it's just exactly what it says. But we've shared your story before, but I want to recap in this first segment to give people a reminder of who you are and what you've achieved, and also the good health that you continue to experience, as well as the people who still remain skeptical because it's kind of hard to believe. Let's let you tell us your remarkable story. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In the most abbreviated version, I grew up here in Oregon, the son of two mountain climbers, had just an idyllic childhood, climbing the Cascades. While other kids were watching Scooby-Doo marathons, I was climbing mountains. So it was, for a kid like me that's a little hyperactive, it was a wonderful time. I went out to college on a lark, to a small college in Kansas, just because I wanted to get a sense of some of the history of that place. And I thought it'd be fun to be paid to do that. And so I went out to Kansas not knowing I'd fall in love with a cute little Kansas farm girl and my mountain climbing days would be over. But I made the best of it, had a wonderful time, built a beautiful life. And then my wife died of an inoperable brain tumor 15 days for our 30th anniversary. And the ironic thing is I had become a therapist. I'd done a lot of writing. I had my own weekly advice column that went out to several papers around the U.S. and it was considered a grief expert. And when she died, I realized it's one thing to have head knowledge, but a whole nother thing to live it. And I was cratered. I was lost. I was just gone. And as they
You had a daughter together too. How old was your daughter when your wife?
She was just shy. It was less than 30 days before her 18th birthday. It was her October of her senior year. So it was really tough on her too. And as happens so many times, we found through research, 1 year, almost to the day after this traumatic event, my cancer, which I had been in remission for years, came back with a vengeance. I had leukemia. This time lymphoma came too. And I just really couldn't muster up the strength or the resolve to really care. And so I moved back to Oregon because Kansas without the cute little Kansas girl is flat. And so, in more ways than one. And so thinking I'd come back and do all these wonderful things, but I was just a really sick guy. And I was renting for the first time in 30 years. And that seemed strange. It just felt like I'd lost everything.
And this was in 2010.
10 to 2013. And by 2013, I really hadn't made any progress in my life or in my grief. I was still having 3 to 6 nightmares every night.
Wow.
So my sleep was really disordered. I'm 6'1", typically about 210 to 215. I was down to 152 pounds. And I've never considered myself a pretty boy, but I was ugly with a capital UG. I looked like I'd walked out of Auschwitz. And that's really what saved me. One day I looked up and that guy just was so pasty and he was so skeletal and you could see all his ribs. And I just was horrified because I'd made a practice of not looking in the mirror because the view wasn't a good one for the last couple of years. And realizing I looked like those old films of the people in Auschwitz, that's when I remembered Viktor Frankl, who had actually survived Auschwitz. And I thought, wow, if I do some of the things that he did, maybe I could survive too. And his main thing that he found with everyone in Auschwitz is if they were viscerally and passionately held to a purpose, they had a better chance of surviving. And so I started prayerfully asking what could be my purpose, and building a practice again should have been. It felt like that was the most responsible thing, but I didn't care. Writing another book seemed like something I could do. I wasn't interested. I just couldn't find anything. And then I looked around. I thought, well, while God, the universe, is waiting to answer me, maybe I could unpack my boxes, because I'd lived in this little duplex for 6 months. And I hadn't even put my bed together. It's embarrassing, but I was so depressed. I was still sleeping on a mattress on the floor like some kind of frat boy. And so I thought, maybe I could be a responsible adult and maybe unpack a bit. And one of the first boxes I unpacked was a journal I'd been forced to keep in 6th grade, that my mom, she'd gotten together a bunch of my stuff that was still in her house and gave it to me. And it said, when I get old, I gotta climb Mount Everest, swim the English Channel. And just this, every time I talk about it, I still get goosebumps. This electric shock just went through me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Because I'd forgotten about this
That got
point.
you excited about something.
The only thing, it made no sense, Lisa, whatsoever, because I am one sick puppy. My numbers are escalating every day. I just look horrible. I have no energy. It takes me, I used to do a lot of triathlons, and I call it crawling inside the back of your head. When you're really hurting and want to keep your pace, you find that muscle mentally to make your body do it. And I was having to use that muscle just to get out of bed and go to the bathroom.
Right. So the idea that you're going to climb Mount Everest or do one of these things. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get to the part where, of the swim,
Right.
and where that's led you to today and how you keep helping other people. We'll be back with Dean Hall in just a moment.
Only 2 ways to live your life. One is as if nothing is a miracle. The other is as if everything's a miracle. I'm Dean Hall. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor and licensed clinical marriage and family therapist living here in Portland. My life was in ruins because everything was just a little too much. My entire life, all I'd ever wanted was a nice, loving family, and I had that. And when my wife died, all of a sudden, I lost everything I was living for. The second time that the cancer came back, I really didn't have much will to live. But the lymphoma was stubborn. As a matter of fact, it was getting worse. And over in Japan, they found that they call it forest bathing. When you spend time in large forests, it boosts the immune system. So in 2015, because the lymphoma was getting worse and they wanted me to do chemo, I started going and spending one whole night every Thursday night and Friday morning out in the Mount Hood wilderness. And I started that May of 2015. By March of 2016, my lymphoma was gone.
We were back talking with Dean Hall. Dean, you were telling us about just the real low time in your life after you lost your wife, and you had a young daughter who was 18 at the time of the loss of your wife, her mother. And so you're a skeletal looking man. You don't have a lot of hope. You're sleeping on a mattress, in a unfamiliar place and floor. And so you decide that you're gonna change. You're gonna make a change, but you have to physically show up for this because you're not at all prepared to do any of the things you wrote in your journal when you were in 6th grade. So
not at all.
How do you get from where you were feeling and physically and emotionally to even thinking about, well, you decided against Mount Everest, but tell us what you did decide to do and how you prepared yourself for that.
Right. I decided to swim the English Channel, but very quickly it didn't hold much allure to me either. And then I remembered a goal, a dream that I had for 30 years. The longest river in Oregon is called the Willamette. It's 187 miles long. It kind of defines our whole state. Our two big college towns are on its riverbanks. Our biggest city, Portland, is split by it. Our state capital is on its riverbanks, and all the Willamette Valley that has really made Oregon well known is fed by this river. And so it's just an iconic river. And I was only born 4 blocks from the river itself. And so I decided I'm going to resurrect this lifelong dream, and I'm going to do it. And this is really important for people to hear, or die trying. I was dying anyway. I didn't want to die sleeping on a couch. So I decided that just little by little, first step was to get in the pool and try to do at least 10 laps. Usually that takes me about 8 minutes, maybe at an easy pace. It took me over an hour because I was so sick. But oh my gosh, Lisa, I felt so good. Kicking off the wall and just stretching out. It was the first time since my wife died I felt a sense of myself again. And so even though a little girl with water wings could have beat me, it didn't matter. I knew that every day, if I just added one more lap, that pretty soon I'd be swimming again. And that's exactly what happened.
So you had to train, so you didn't just
Right.
decide I'm going to swim this river. And then I also have watched some of your footage and
Right.
see that you were followed, you were taken care of in terms of having a boat there.
Right.
You were very safe about it.
Oh,
And
gosh.
tell us how long did it take you to get to the point that you were able to do the swim?
It took me about, and I knew it would, if things went well, it would take me about a year.
Okay.
And that's with steady recovery, but very quickly moving that lymph system was really good. And I started building muscle. I every day had more hope. It was really, really hard because when you move a bad lymph system, it starts to detox. So it floods your body with toxins. So I knew within about an hour after every swim, I'd get flu-like symptoms for 2 or 3 hours. So everybody thinks it was just this really fun event. And boy, I just got stronger every day. No, it was hellish. It was really hard. But I'd already been experiencing hell with no power and nothing to do for 3 years. So this wasn't as bad as that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've learned from your story as well, and just in terms of the showing up part, having something that you're committed to, having a way to also, I would think, I don't know that I've heard you say it, kind of showing your daughter this other side of you that is still hopeful. I'd imagine it was difficult for her to watch you wither away, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then
It was
to
scaring her to death.
yeah.
And I'd always been a very purposeful man and father, and one who'd always been very confident. She'd seen me succeed at just about anything I'd ever gone to do. And then for 3 years, we just talked last weekend. She said, I felt like I'd lost my dad and my mom because just weren't there. Even when I talked to you, you'd have this 1,000-yard stare.
Yeah.
And
So you're getting yourself back with each swim, with each bit of training, everything you're doing. Did you do some of the training in the river? I'm assuming just parts of it, just to prepare yourself for that environment, or did you stick to?
I started in June. My first day in the river, actually in the swim, was June 3rd, 2014. My first practice swim wasn't until April of that year. And it was a total debacle. I had a lot to learn going from pool to an actual river. I swam lakes, swam in the ocean, but trying to move with the river is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
And so
we just floated the river here. Yeah.
it is.
Yesterday, and that's so hard sometimes just to just navigating that. So that's a
Right.
very silly comparison, but that just is kind of how remarkable how remarkable it is that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
So you take this swim, and your health is improving over time because you're, like you said, you're moving your lymph system. You're not just laying dormant on the couch. You're using your body. You're exercising. Were you seeing improvements in your numbers during training?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're seeing the improvements, and then you go, and when we say numbers, the way that
White
an
blood
oncologist will
counts.
evaluate your blood to know if your cancer is improving or not. And so you're seeing improvement. And then how long did the swim actually take you? And
The swim took
full
me
length-
22 days to swim the 187 miles, and we take every Sunday off. And a lot of people think it was a spiritual thing. And it was partly that, but it was mostly, I've been such a perfectionist all my life. I made a commitment to, even when I tried to create a world record, not to do it perfectly. And so by taking the day off, it showed that I could even do this big thing, become the first person in the world to do something, but not have to do it perfectly. And for me, that was really important.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I just want to let people know where you are now and the way you've been able to help others. We'll be back in just a moment.
Got to do something. So I started asking myself, what would do the world a little bit of good? That even if I died trying, it would leave a wonderful legacy for my daughter, and maybe do something bigger than me, a purpose beyond myself. And that's when I found out that nobody had ever swum the entire length of the Willamette River. I remember standing over the river in 1984 after a bicycle race that I'd come out for, and looking at the Willamette and asking my dad, has anybody ever swum this whole thing? And he said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Well, just the fact that he said that kind of set the hook. And even back then, I thought that would be an amazing idea, but I quickly forgot about it. But it came back then at age 54.
He invited me to a meeting, and it was a shock to me when they pronounced that he was going to swim the river to raise funds for cancer. And I thought, well, that's a good thing. And I was very supportive in that, but I thought that's an impossibility to swim from Eugene to the Columbia River. I was blown out of my mind that he would even think of something like that. He has always been a dreamer and thinking of impossible things to do in climbing or hiking or swimming. And I thought, well, I think I'll attach myself to him and see how far we can go in this dream.
We are finishing up with you, Dean Hall. The title of your book is The Wild Cure, and it chronicles your journey that we're talking about now, as well as your swim throughout what is the distance you did?
187 miles.
187 miles over 22 days, taking
And
Sundays out.
42 to 45 degree water.
Yeah. So at the end of this, now your numbers are much better. And you are...
Well, the amazing thing was the first blood test I took after the swim, the leukemia was gone.
And
the only thing my oncologist could figure is I was in a constant state of hypothermia. And this was way before I'd ever heard of Wim Hof or cold plunging was a thing. And that cold water was constantly boosting my immune system, as we now know that it does.
And so this has been 10 years now. So we just have a couple minutes left. Let's tell everyone where you are today. And you are a counselor, and you've changed the way you counsel people because of your connection to nature.
Dynamically. I mean, I'm clinically trained, have been a counselor for 35 years, which makes me officially old. But the power of nature, I've read about it. There's a new field called eco-psychology that's got a lot of great research. I kind of winked at it, but I've never really understood how much the reason we're anxious, depressed, and addicted is because we live in these concrete jungles with this Wi-Fi storm changing everything about the way our body reacts and our brain works. And so I believe the future of counseling, therapy, and coaching, especially mine, is number one, you have to be upright and walking forward. The most powerless position to the unconscious mind is the fetal position. The second to that is the seated position. And so we start coaching and counseling off right on the wrong foot right away by putting people in the second most powerless position and then asking them to talk about what they're powerless against. The most powerful position is when you're upright and walking forward. And so I think all counseling of the future will be upright and walking forward. And then to add neurological boosts to both the therapist and the client, I really believe it needs to be done in a nature or green space setting, because I could take hours telling you all the things that happen unconsciously because of the bird song, because of the wind, because of the things that are emitted from trees. There are all sorts of things that are happening unconsciously that will boost not only your immune system, but your neurological function.
Now, when we spoke last, you spent one day a week in the forest, deep in the forest. You still do. Deep in the forest, where you said sometimes only your footprints are seen.
Right. And since then, I've had some chances on taking people out, and they've joined me. Some folks aren't ready to go that remote. And so I just walk them around an urban park where there are big, beautiful trees, and that's enough.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is for some people that wouldn't be their thing necessarily, or they'd have to work up to it. And so you might be counterproductive with them just being overstimulated, perhaps. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, there's something called the green effect. They might be a little overstimulated at first, but very quickly, the trees calm them down.
Yeah, I could see that too. Well, I just love the work that you're doing, and I love that you and I have stayed in touch over this time, and I keep following you, and I always, there's some people in this world who are out in a river or somewhere, before I'm even, out my door. So I'm always impressed by that, and I'm really grateful to you for sharing it with us. And I wish you the best, and I love that. Congratulations on the 10 years since the swim and your, full recovery. They use the word remission. I use the word cure. I like it. It's better.
Right. A lot of people react to that word cure, but I'm healthier really than all my friends my age, and healthier emotionally, because when you've been through what I've been through, the little niggling, annoying things in life just don't get you.
Yeah, they don't.
So nice to be on this side of that story.
Yeah. Keep it moving, right?
Attitude.
Yeah.
What's that?
Keep it moving, right?
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much, Dean. Take care.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.